got the papers. To take you through them, the anthropologist Mariana Hotta and the former editor of the Daily Star, Don Neeson. Lovely to see you both, ladies. Marianne, let's start with you, though. And yeah, I think we're all going to have to reconcile ourselves to the fact that the paper reviews this morning aren't exactly going to be anything other than pretty grim. The front page of the Eye, it does feel, and certainly the Ministry of Defence briefing that we just had in the past few minutes does suggest that Putin's forces are beginning to make those gains towards Kiev.
Yeah, so I think we're looking at another stage of what I think for many of us feels like we're watching something that could be, you know, a drama from the Second World War, except that people are wearing modern clothes and you know, holding plastic carrier bags. The big photo that the Eye is leading with on that front page is of a young man. He's called Yaroslav, and that's his father-in-law. And they've just put their wives and children on a train to escape Kiev, which is probably the next target. Russian forces are now in positions where they can fire apparently heavy artillery onto the city. So this is something, you know, a stage of what experts have suggested is the kind of plan for invasion, which maybe Russia had intended to, you know, fall on Kiev earlier than now. But apparently now the weather's got a little bit colder, so the ground has frozen, which means that this heavy artillery is much easier to get across what would otherwise have been perhaps muddy fields off the actual hard standing of roads, and get into positions. So now the residents of Kiev, 2 million of them have already left, 1 million remain. Out of those, I guess some people are hoping to keep sheltering and keep on carrying on, and others are planning to take up arms and defend their city. You know, and we've seen this footage, we've seen the photos of volunteers digging trenches in the forest, and it's just extraordinary because there are many wars around the world, but these ones, I think the reason this has had such an impact on us and because it's dominating our news cycle is partly because of the scale of the players involved. Russia is a big international power, and it, you know, pivots that axis with Russia and China, the US and the UK and the EU, but also it's, you know, it feels very much on our doorstep. People were going to holiday in Kiev, you know, a few weeks ago.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, just a couple of lines, Dawn, from the front of the Eye. And, you know, if you come out of your shelter or take your car, you will be killed. Russian forces are leaving the streets littered with corpses. I mean, your story's on the front of the Times. I have to say, like, if you've not been to war, I don't think you can understand what it is like, the stench of it. But as the Times front page shows, you know, the ordinary residents of Kiev, the ordinary residents of Ukraine, are willing to take up arms and defend their country.
Absolutely, Neil. And this is why I particularly like this page one today, because very unusually, the Times has splashed on a first-person report, a colour piece, literally, of what it's like on the streets of Kyiv at the moment. Now, you know, as Marianne just pointed out, you know, up until very recently, Kyiv was like any of our big cities. You know, you had hipster bars and burger joints and, you know, shops selling designer goods. It was very, very much like we live our lives. And now we all see the footage, you look at the pictures of sandbags and trenches being dug and bombed out buildings, and you can't quite believe that this has happened in such a short space of time. But this is particularly interesting piece by Rich Spencer, and he was talking to the incredibly brave, million or so, as May points out, people who stay to fight and defend their city. And this is what really brings it home. There's one chap he's talking to, whose name is Roman Polanski. He's a 56-year-old, and, you know, up until a few weeks ago, Neil, he was a foreign exchange dealer. And now he's wearing fatigues, clutching an AK-47. They also chat to a lovely lady called Oskana. She's 42. And she's standing in a trench with an AK-47. But she's talking about how she stocked up her larder with homemade jams that she makes at home, which is to throw... I mean, you can buy anything you want, or you could buy anything you wanted in Kyiv up until recently, food-wise. But this is a throwback to her grandparents who endured the Soviet Union and had to pickle all their own fruit and vegetables. So she's doing that again. It's the colour of this piece that really, really brings it home to you. We can all look at the figures and look at the ammunition and the tanks rolling and everything, but these are the people on the ground, and basically, Neil, they are us.
Mm. I mean, Marianne, I'd suggest that part of the reason, perhaps, that people have been so committed to defending their country, Ukraine, is evidenced on the front of the Mirror. Some of the acts, the acts of barbarism that are being alleged to have been conducted by Putin's troops. But at least on this story, the bombing of that maternity ward, there is a good news story at the heart of it.
Yeah, that's it. So this lady was photographed and filmed walking down the stairs of the bombed out maternity hospital, heavily pregnant. And now there's a photo of her. She's wearing the same pajamas. Apparently her name is Mariana. And next to her is a little baby bundle of a new baby girl called Veronica. So a happy-ish ending, I guess. No one plans to give birth in a situation like this, of course, and bring new life into such a horrible situation as well. She's apparently a Ukrainian beauty blogger, and the Russian embassy in London put out a series of tweets earlier in the week saying that this was a fake and actually she was an actress, and that the injuries on her face were all makeup. And the UN have come out and said, no, the maternity hospital was active. It was in use. The children's hospital was in use. It was very clear from satellite images that this was a hospital. And so there was no excuse, as it were, that there's kind of, the Russians were saying that it was a building that wasn't being used as a hospital, and it was actually being used to store troops and supplies. And the UN have come out and said categorically that's not true. And the tweets have been removed from Twitter. But I think it's a reminder, isn't it, that not only are there these human stories within the kind of the thickness of war that we are getting this insight into, because people have smartphones and reporters are still there, but it's also a reminder that all that information we're getting on social media and all the information that people in Russia are getting on their social media, it's very hard to distinguish what's true and what's false. And so much of this war is being fought in cyberspace, not just, on the streets of Mariupol and in the roads leading into Kiev.
Yeah. I mean, one thing we do know for a fact, Dawn, is that our commitment to taking refugees into this country is not being universally praised. In fact, it's probably not being praised particularly widely. Take us to the front of The Guardian.
Yeah, it's certainly not being praised by Emmanuel Macron this morning, is it, on the front page of The Guardian? He's absolutely savaged Boris Johnson and Priti Patel for our treatment of the refugees. Evidently, we have 22,000 applications waiting, and of those, only 957 have so far been processed. And, as supportive as you want to be of your own government in a war situation, we all have to admit that our organisation of the refugee situation has not been good. Now, whether this is, just a lack of organisation or there's deliberate intent here, who's to know?
Sorry, Dawn, sorry to interrupt, but just on this point, isn't the government doing, and a number of people have made this point this week, but isn't the government doing that which they were elected to do, which was secure the borders, to ensure that people arriving in this country didn't arrive here without security checks already having taken place? I understand the refugee situation is different, but from a certain perspective, isn't this what they were elected to do?
No, absolutely. And, they got there on this ticket. And so you can understand what they are trying to do. But as you say, Neil, this is a completely different situation. And a lot of people are saying, well, hold on a minute, you're letting sort of the illegal migrants come across in the Channel, and we don't really appear to be doing that much to stop that. That appears to be a disaster, and people are dying in the Channel still as well. And yet we are making it very difficult for women and children literally fleeing a war zone. I mean, they're being bombed in maternity hospitals, literally fleeing a war zone. We're making it incredibly difficult to come there. It was only on Thursday that Priti Patel changed her mind yet again, as from you have to apply in person at an immigration centre, which was in Calais. Oh, no, it wasn't in Calais. You have to go back to Paris. I mean, these people have travelled 1,500 miles as it is. And on Thursday, she said, no, you can apply online. But it's still incredibly difficult. And naturally, the EU have literally said, OK, everyone can come. We'll process you once you're here and safely. And you do have to wonder sometimes whether that is something we should be doing more of. I mean, you know, you see the pictures of the little kids and the women fleeing, and that poor lady had to give birth in a war zone. I mean, giving birth isn't easy at the best of times. To do it with bombs raining down on you, unimaginable.
I mean, and given the very proud history that we have in this country of being so open to refugees, including some who came into my family. Mary-Anne, let's turn though to the FT Weekend Edition and their lead story. And it makes sense, but we have now removed favoured nation status from Russia. Trading with Russia, in essence, is going to become nigh on impossible.
Yeah, that's right. And so this is the G7, Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the UK and the US. So collectively, we are no longer offering it's called favoured nation status. So these are things like the terms of trade that were previously with Russia. So they no longer exist. So exports will be more expensive. The US have said that they probably will withdraw importing things like vodka and diamonds, you know, those important Russian exports. In the EU, for example, even critical imports of iron and steel have been banned. And of course, Russia won't be able to access funding from international institutions like the World Bank and the IMF.
Mary-Anne,
so
we're going to have to pause there because we are just about out of time. And anyway, who needs vodka when you've got whiskey? Mary-Anne, Don, we will see you bright and breezy next hour for more of the same. But you guys can stay exactly where you are, because after the break, as you will understand it, as we look at live pictures of Kiev. A little earlier, we heard sounds of gunfire and explosions echoing around the city. We'll bring you the very latest as Russian forces continue their somewhat slow advance on Kiev.